we have three children. John Paul is the middle of our three children. And he was starting his first day of kindergarten. And he had mentioned to us that he peed blood in the toilet. And we said, oh, geez. And so now we're concerned. And we called the doctor. He went to the hospital and they needed to perform an ultrasound. And the doctor had come in and I said, my son's got cancer. They said, he has a stage 1 Wilms tumor. A month later, I happened to check myself to see, geez, something wrong with me. And lo and behold, I found something on my testicle. And I said, geez, that seems odd. I went to my urologist and he had said to me, he's like, I think it might be a stage 1 seminoma. So the next day I had an ultrasound myself. Lo and behold, I found out that I had cancer, but it bonded us. We really were able to grow as a family.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about overcoming challenges and looking for the positive. I'm delighted to welcome Paul Gencarella. Paul is the founder of Mindset Mastery and an expert speaker, coach, and self-image advisor. You can reach Paul at his website, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Paul. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thank you. And I have to say, Linda, you have a fantastic, elegant voice. My goodness, that's wonderful. Very welcoming.
You. Oh, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you feel welcome because
Yes.
I'm so glad that you are here. And I'm looking forward to hearing your story. And I checked out your website, and you have a very unique experience where you and your 5-year-old son had cancer at the same time.
Yes.
Would you be willing to kind of walk us through that experience so that we kind of get an idea of who you are and what you have been through?
Yeah, sure. And again, it's really not an uncommon story, so to speak. We all are familiar with illness and disease and cancer, so to speak. But, we have three children. JP, John Paul is the middle of our three children. I have two boys and a girl. And he was starting his first day of kindergarten. So my wife was getting everyone ready. Luke went already on the bus, and JP was getting ready for school. And my wife was tending to it was 2009, so our 3-year-old daughter at the time. And JP was on the porch playing the back of a chair, rocking back and forth, and it started going to the left, and it went over the steps, and he took a tumble onto the concrete patio and smashed his head and cut his eye here. My wife was concerned because, it started to bleed, and naturally it can look worse than it really is. So, she took him to the pediatrician. And the pediatrician, cleared him almost immediately. Said, listen, it's just an abrasion. The vision's fine. Everything's checked out. He's in good shape. And actually sent him to school. You know what I mean? So he went to school. Everything was fine. That was on a Wednesday, Linda. And then on Friday morning, he had mentioned to us prior to getting on the bus that he peed blood in the toilet. And we said, oh, geez. And so now we're concerned, thinking that there's some type of contusion, some type of issue in his internal organs, naturally. And we called the doctor. He went to the hospital, and they needed to perform a ultrasound, and they needed to draw blood. So that drew an alarm for my son. He didn't like needles, and he was very difficult in that respect. They did the ultrasound, and they were just matter of fact saying to us that we needed to go up to the local children's hospital about 45 minutes away north of where we were. So we didn't think anything of it because of the fact that he was so I would say uncooperative, because he's a 5-year-old kid, complaining and being poked and prodded. So we went up to the emergency room at Hasbro Hospital in Providence, Rhode Island, and the emergency room staff, how fantastic they were able to handle with him fantastically. They really did a great job. And they had showed us the images of the CAT scan and everything else. And they called me over and they said, I just want to show you the images. He's got his 2 kidneys here. this is his normal kidney, and this is an abnormal kidney. I'm like, okay, and it was enlarged. I didn't think anything of it. I said, okay, is he able to play soccer tomorrow? And he looked at me. He's like, well, let's have a talk in our conference room. So I'm like, okay, that sounded odd. So my wife and I get escorted into this room where there's cushions, boxes of Kleenex. And I said, Betty, this thing doesn't look good. She's like, what do you mean? I said, I think something's seriously wrong with JP. It's more than just a bruise. She's like, really? And the doctor had come in with two other people. And I said, my son's got cancer. Huh? They said, whoa, slow down. You know what I mean? Let's not get carried away. But yes, he does have cancer. He has a stage 1 Wilms tumor. And when he fell from those steps, it ruptured the tumor and sent blood to his urine. And that's a telltale sign of a Wilms tumor. You will get blood in your urine at some point, but it could be, could have been 3 weeks from then, 3 days from then, 3 years from then. You know what I mean? We would never have known unless he had fallen that he had this Wilms tumor. So thankfully, he did fall and did rupture that tumor on his right kidney, and they were able to remove it a couple days later. And from there, everything just got better. And I say it was a blessing to us because my wife and I really subconsciously didn't really talk about it, but we just handled everything in stride. And we didn't hide anything from our son. We didn't whisper cancer to the people that came over. And we just talked about it openly and said, as a matter of fact, this is what he has. And he's going to have, 37 chemo treatments and beginning, whenever it was going to begin. And it was very difficult for us, but we were very optimistic and handled it the best. And I think the best prayer, because there was a lot of people praying for us, but the best prayer that I received was not so much to heal my son, but to receive the strength and mercy to deal whatever the Lord's will is. And I think that goes for anything, right? We want our broken bones to heal. We want our diseases to heal. We want our marriages to heal. We want all these things to get better. But sometimes what we need is the strength to be able to endure that pain. And I think it was a great prayer for me because it really didn't set me up for failure. You know what I mean? If whatever it was to happen, I was able to cope with it. And my wife and I both worked through that because it was very difficult for us because, how the heck did this happen? You know what I mean? It was just crazy. I came home that week after the surgery and my, 3-year-old daughter, Eliza's climbing to get some peanut butter off the shelf, put us up a chair. I'm like, well, should I stop her? Or, you know what I mean? Because, maybe if she falls, I'll find something, you know what I mean? But you can't live that way. You know what I mean? You have to live appropriately and you have to live the best way you can, and you can't second guess things. So I was watching him, I think Sunday Night Football, that it might have been, maybe a month later, and my wife was working a second job as a server in a restaurant, and the kids were in bed, and I happened to check myself to see, geez, something wrong with me, and lo and behold, I found something on my testicle, and I said, geez, that seems odd. So my wife had mentioned to me, well, I think that might be a good idea for you to go to a urologist. So I went to my urologist, who I was friendly with, and he had said to me, he's like, yeah, that's a good find, Paul. I said, what do you mean by a good find? He's like, I think it might be a stage 1 seminoma, and it's probable. So the next day I had a ultrasound myself. Lo and behold, I found out that I had cancer. And I think that too was a blessing. I know it was a blessing, Linda, because if it wasn't for my son and his cancer, I never would have been checking around and being concerned about any ailments or anything with myself. So when that diagnosis came to a head, it was almost like a monkey was lifted off my son's back because he felt comforted that his dad too had the same thing that he had. And they kind of could go through it, together in a certain respect. And I only had 2 doses of chemo. He had 37. He was throwing up, 3 days a week. You know what I mean? I had nothing to that extent, although I was sick from the chemo. I can't imagine how he went through all that. But it bonded us. It was a great bond. And we really were able to grow as a family. And my wife was just remarkable, being able to hold everything down and keep everybody together, so to speak, with a husband and a son that has cancer. It was just crazy. But I knew there was going to be some type of a learning lesson. And that learning lesson, Linda, for me, wasn't when the big, awful things happen. It's when those smaller things happen that we get so worked up about. It enabled me to take a step back and say, all right, is it really this bad? Is it as bad as cancer? Is it as bad as, and I was able to walk through life's challenges that much easier, so to speak. And, that's the story of my son. And we can get into, what happened to me later on in life. But it really was a blessing.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And I hope a lot of people are listening. There are so many layers to what you just explained and shared with us. One is we have some facts, we have some events. This happened. My son had a tragic fall. He was diagnosed with cancer. I was diagnosed with cancer. We have facts. These are events. They happened. But what's so amazing is that someone who experiences those events, it could be, I cannot believe that my whole world is falling apart. I have this bad thing happening, and then this bad thing happening, and then this bad thing happening. It's like nothing is going right in my life. I should just crawl in a hole and die. And that's not the way you looked at it. It feels like in every circumstance, you are looking for what is positive about this scenario. The fall, it's a fall. We're going to be okay. We're going to get it checked out. We're going to go. And then recognizing, hey, this fall was the catalyst that allowed a symptom that was noticeable so that we could find out about a problem that my son already had. He had it whether we knew it or not.
Right.
But now we know. And because we know, now we can do something about it. And then with your own experience of, well, I've got something, I've got cancer, and recognizing, wow, this is a blessing because my little boy who is dealing with things that are so big now has a companion, someone who understands, and he knows that you understand because you're doing it too. That is mind-blowing.
Mm.
I am so appreciative for your example. And then the perspective, not only that you pulled through all of this, but that you gained after, is now there's a comparison. Someone just cut me off in traffic. Do I blow up or do I think, that's not as bad as cancer? I can deal with this. That is so beautiful. And we chatted a little bit before we started recording, and I'm aware that now JP is an adult, a young adult, and now he's going abroad to Spain, and he seems to be doing very well. So I love happy endings. We don't always get them, and I really appreciated when you talked about your favorite prayer, that it's not just please make it better, it's give me the strength to get through, and that makes all the difference because we got to get through whatever it is. Thank you. Wow. Yes. That was amazing. Wow. All right. What else do you have to share with us? I don't think you can top that, but let's, add to it.
Yeah, no, probably not. But, and I think what's so important for your audience to understand is it doesn't have to be a big, terrible tragedy for you to become more aware of becoming a more guided person in dealing with life circumstances. And my point that I wanted to drive home is that we need to become more present, more aware, and just mentally stronger, because we tend to sometimes create problems that are bigger than what they may appear to be. And I'm not downplaying cancer. I'm not downplaying disease or tragedy or whatever have you. But we need to, better understand that. And I think I experienced what I experienced in 2009 to really experience what I went through in 2018 and again in 2019. I was in the insurance business right out of college for 25 years. And 2018 came around. Actually, it was 2017, and the insurance agency that I worked for, I was in line to purchase it. And to make a long story short, my boss at the time wanted more money than I was willing to pay, and that generally happens. But I didn't want to be upside down for 7 or so years, which is what it would have been. And that's a normal thing when buying a business and an enterprise. So I chose not to purchase the agency, and instead we merged with a bigger outfit, which enabled me to sell more and have more different types of clients, which is a good thing. But what transpired during that sales process is I became just so fanatic and just so single focused on selling more insurance and growing and making more money that I found myself living in a psychiatric institution. I actually had a breakdown. Some people back in the day would call it a nervous breakdown. It was a bipolar diagnosis, and I never experienced that ever in my life. A little bit my junior year, but I think it all stemmed from that and kind of grew from that because it came out of nowhere. But if you look back on it, my mental health, even with this great episode of dealing with the cancer, it was masked in a certain respect, and something just came out from that regard. And I had a chemical imbalance, but it just didn't come out from nowhere. It was brought on from my thought process. So I found myself living in a psychiatric institution for about 10 days in 2018. And when I got out, the rehabilitation was extremely difficult. And I was in a very deep clinical depression. And I say clinical because I've never experienced that type of depression before. I was suicidal. Not suicidal where I was going to go and kill myself right then and there, and it was planned out. But I just did not want to be alive, Linda. I didn't want to be alive at all. And that's a hard way to live when you wake up thinking of maybe I'll die in a car accident today, and it's just, it was a morbid way of thinking, but I just wanted things to get back to the way they were. And eventually they started to do that. And they got back to the way they were, to the point where I found myself living in a psychiatric institution again in 2019 for about 8 days. So it wasn't 10 days, it was 8 days. So it was a little bit better. You know what I mean? But the point is, I wasn't coming to grips of dealing head on with what I had for mental illness. And it was a scary place because that depression is dark and it's very, very difficult to counter. The best time to deal with depression is not when you're depressed. It's when you're feeling good. It's doing things that are building up an arsenal of tools to not allow yourself to get down to that deep depression. And when you start to go down, you recognize it and you're able to pull yourself out of it. And fortunately, I was able to do that through an electronic procedure called ECT. And it was more of like a brain shock. And it kind of sent the neurons in a different direction. And it did work. It took some time. That was October of 19. Ironically, at the same time, I lost my job. So that was a difficult challenge in and of itself. But this new company said, okay, this kid went to a psychiatric hospital 1 year, very supportive. Happened again the second year. They're not understanding mental health, bipolar. They don't want to. So I was terminated, and there was a wrongful termination, lawsuit that we prevailed on. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is, what am I putting in my mind to help me get better and stronger? And personal growth and development has always been something that's been something I've been familiar with, even 1994, starting in the insurance business. I'd go to Zig Ziglar and all the different types of people, And it was motivational, it was inspirational, but I never grasped onto it as embraced it, so to speak. And that wasn't until January of 2020. And when I did that, that's when things really started to change, because it wasn't dealing with things on the outside and the challenges on the outside. It was dealing with me on the inside. And when you make yourself better on the inside, everything, and I mean everything on the outside, gets better and changes for the better. And that's a tough concept for us to understand as a society, because we try to deal with things on the outside, dealing with that issue or this issue or that disease or that divorce or that event. And when you are in the inside, when you are made, I guess, whole and understanding, it makes things so much easier. And as a simple example, every single day of my life, I write down in a journal 10 things that I'm grateful for. And I do that every single day. And by doing that, that's just one little thing of helping with the arsenal of dealing with any depression or anxiety. It enables to put things in perspective. And those 10 things can be as simple as my electric toothbrush, for crying out loud, or I don't drink coffee, but a simple cup of coffee that you just absolutely love and just are feeling good about. And those are the things. It's the little things in life that, when we appreciate them and enjoy them, the bigger things in life become more appreciative. And that's really what I want your audience to understand is it's not just mental illness. It's mental challenges. You know what I mean? This anxiety, this stress, this angst, we were able to deal with it so much better when we deal with ourselves first. We handle it with ourselves, and we become one mentally with ourselves, and then we can handle everything on the outside so much easier.
Wow.
So,
Paul, we talked about something that was very deep and very physical, and something that people can understand, and such a basic level. And now you've shared not only physical challenges, but mental, emotional, financial. So all of the things. And I'm so grateful that you shared some of the rest of your story, because if we stopped after the cancer story, you sound a little bit like Superman, where just, you can handle anything.
Oof.
And to find that there was a kryptonite, and the kryptonite was hiding in several different layers. But now we've talked about bipolar, and recognizing that that is a real challenge, and financial issues, and then depression. And as you shared your story about that desire to not be here anymore, I've felt that.
Oh, yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
And I have to say, if you've never experienced it, you don't get it.
No, you don't. You don't. You can't snap out of it.
And you're lucky, because it stings. And it's wonderful to know that we can go from that place to being okay again. And that matters. So, any of our listeners, if you're struggling with physical issues, mental, emotional, financial, you're not alone. Someone else has gone through something similar, and it can be okay. And just like that prayer that Paul shared at the beginning, it's not necessarily make this go away. It's give me the strength so that I can be okay. And I really appreciated that you shared an action step, something that we can do about it.
Oh, right.
And that was gratitude. And gratitude, there's been an awful lot of research about gratitude. I know when you're in a state of depression and someone offers something that sounds like a simple, ridiculous solution, it's not. It actually changes the way our brain works. Some of the research it shows that it helps to stimulate the prefrontal cortex. It helps us to be able to act rather than to just react. It helps change the way that we feel, and it helps change the way that we see things. Like at the very beginning, when we talked about there were events that happened to you and to your son, a fall, a cancer diagnosis, another cancer diagnosis. When we're in a state of gratitude, we can find the positives and not just dwell on the negatives. It
Absolutely.
changes the way that we think and helps to pull us out. I loved how you mentioned the time to deal with depression is not when you're in the depths of it. It's on the days you're feeling good. Really, we have to deal
Yeah.
with it every day because when you're
Right.
down, you got to bounce up. But when
Mhm.
you're up, don't just relax and say, "Oh, I got this." It's like, okay, now that I'm feeling good, let's take the next step.
Absolutely. For sure. And I think it's important to have someone, such as myself, because most people don't want to talk about mental health when it's them. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, have a candid conversation with you and saying, yeah, I'm really having suicidal thoughts today, Linda. I don't want to, that's just something that doesn't come natural. Talking about a heart attack or cancer is a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier than talking about our mental health because it's just such a weakness as though we may feel that it is, and it's not a weakness, and it's not just mental illness as I mentioned before. It's our mental challenges. You know what I mean? Whatever it may be, you may be perfectly healthy mentally, but you suffer from anxiety or stress, and you just you're not feeling fulfilled in life, and that's ultimately our goal is success, but success with fulfillment. And Tony Robbins says, success without fulfillment is failure. And that's really what we want to do is we want to be happy. And in order to be happy, we have to do something about it. And it's a matter of doing these little exercises that may seem laborious and a bit mundane, but once you start getting into that, it's like a physical lifestyle. When you go to an exercise every day, it becomes a habit, and you do it because you're receiving good benefits from it, and you get other good benefits. So it's we have to exercise our minds as well as we do our bodies. And what are we feeding our bodies? Are we putting a bunch of frozen treats and ice cream and junk food in ourselves? And are we doing the same thing to our mind? Are we saying, no, I can't do this. I'm not worthy of that. I'm such an idiot. I'm not this and that. How many, we experience about, they say, these researchers, what, 80,000 thoughts per day, and 80% of them are negative. You know what I mean? So we have a challenge there. So when we become aware and we start putting positive affirmations that I have done this and I am doing this, it makes things so much better. And it really, for me, January of 2020, it was probably March of 2020, right at the pandemic, right when that COVID had hit, when I started feeling my best and really feeling invigorated. Ironically, when the rest was happening to the country, where everyone was kind of coiling inward, you know what I mean? I was really feeling good at that point. So it was a blessing to me because I had the family that were home and supportive and around, and the kids were, homeschooled in a certain respect or being schooled at home. So it gave me the strength, and that's what your audience needs to understand is exercises and tactics and strategies. What I just gave of like gratitude exercises and other things. What are other things that we can do? And that's the key.
It is. And it's small, simple action steps that make all of
Yes.
the difference. And I loved how you compared it to junk food. What we put into our bodies, is it healthy or is it junk? What am I putting into my mind? Is it healthy or is it junk? I also love that you were used the word success and the word failure. And as we're talking about our challenges, and there's no stigma, there's no judgment when we have a physical ailment. If I break my leg, there's no judgment. If I get cancer, there's no judgment. Sympathy, yes. Judgment, no. It just is. But when we have struggles or challenges that are mental or emotional, there's often a judgment call. And it can be judgment from others, and it can be judgment from ourselves. Whether it's, oh, that I should be better than that. I should be stronger than that.
Yeah.
So I
Oh,
must
absolutely.
have failed. And that creates a downward spiral that is so frustrating. It will be nice if someday, when we can look at all of the different challenges that we have, whether they're physical, financial, mental, emotional, social, and just say, oh, that's a challenge, without the judgment and the feeling of failure that goes along with it. But as we work with what we've got, here we are. There are ways to have success, and success in feeling good, even if it's March 2020 and the whole world is starting to shut down with a pandemic. If our internal self is in a good place, we'll be okay.
For
And
sure.
that matters because we can't control the whole world, but we can control what's going on inside of us. And it comes through small, simple action steps, which is beautiful because he has some power about it. And that matters because I know for me, being in depression, I felt so helpless, so out of control. And to recognize that there is something that we can do that makes a difference helps put the power back in. So you don't feel just out of control. Oh my gosh, this has been so amazing. Paul, is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover?
Yeah,
before
I
we
think
close?
just wanted to clean up. I don't want to clean up, but just to follow up on what you said, Linda, about the judgment when it comes to mental impairments and challenges. It's rooted in ignorance. It really is. It's once you understand and get an understanding of what you're going through, the reparation process and the rehabilitation aspect of it becomes much better. So, that's really where that personal growth and development can help. And that's a broad term, but that's self-improvement in a certain respect. So yes, to follow up on what you're saying, it can be certainly done, and it can take a healthy person mentally and make them stronger as well. It's not like it's someone that's has an ailment. This is for everybody that really wants to better themselves. We're always wanting to be the best version of ourselves, right? Or at least it should be. And then that's really what we can do in that respect. So that's why I'd like to end with that anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for including that. And this idea of improving ourselves is for everyone, whatever level you are at. And just like you mentioned, the time to deal with depression is not when you're down, it's when you're up. And when we're feeling okay is a perfect time to continue to improve ourselves and to become even better. So, Paul, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Wade Boggs. He said, "A positive attitude causes a chain reaction of positive thoughts, events, and outcomes. It is a catalyst, and it sparks extraordinary results." Today, I invite our listeners to embrace a positive attitude. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the free stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.